Hello everybody and welcome to another Arkham video here at Playing Board Games. Today we're going to be talking about the City of Archives. I have a little notepad with various talking points and thoughts because City of Archives is on my mind. I played it yesterday, and there was also some discussions in my Discord channel about City of Archives and how one user in particular hates it. And while this video isn't here to single that user out, or ultimately even try to convince them that their opinions are wrong, rather what I want to do is I want to approach City of Archives with the kind of open discussion that I do in the Hot Takes video. If you haven't seen those list videos, I like to approach a hot take from a fair perspective and try to understand what that perspective is, even if I ultimately kind of maybe potentially even disagree with it. Is this likewise with this? Well, I definitely don't think that City of Archives, I don't hate this scenario. I can understand and relate to why people dislike it. And the intention of this is to bring up the positives of the scenario, talk about the negatives of the scenario, and also potentially give you guidance as a player for how to better approach the scenario without feeling like you need to warp your deck or ultimately change the perspective of you as a player for the scenario of rather being like, I can't play my deck to what my deck has become. So that's kind of like what this whole discussion here for City of Archives. Someone's probably thinking it, so I'm going to kind of just like nip it in the bud right now. They're going to say, Justin, you like skill cards. Of course you like City of Archives. But City of Archives is not necessarily a skill-only scenario, right? There is a lot of tools, there are a lot of tools in this scenario that allow you as a player in order to get ahead. And I think that while I have a good time with this scenario, I have brought a lot of different decks to this. Funnily enough, the only time I've ever had to solo this scenario was with a Silas Marsh deck, so I know what you're saying. That is a skill deck. But that was a mono fighter skill deck and was still able to get through it. So it's one of those things I just need to nip that in the bud right now because I imagine someone was going to comment it, but this is coming from all perspectives of play styles, whether it be some combo decks that I've brought, some skill decks that I've brought, some like events, some well-balanced, some asset heavy. I've brought them all. I've brought them all to this, and they all can kind of just approach it with the same mindset. So that's where we're going to be coming with how to handle this scenario when it comes. So let's start by talking about the Yithian in the room. The elephant in the room here, body of a Yithian. I think the big things that people talk about for why they do not enjoy this scenario is that they feel as if they lose their investigator, which they do, and they also lose the unique cards from their deck. So they ultimately feel as if they are not playing the deck that they brought. And you know what? Fair game to that thought process, right? Like, I think that is a very sort of... This scenario by design is meant to remove your identity, right? Like, that is the intention of the scenario. So feeling as if you've lost that investigator is kind of the point. And if you kind of just disagree with that as a whole, that's something that City of Archives is going to do all the time, and it can never sway it, right? So losing your investigator and losing your unique cards, these combination can cause a player to feel like they're not playing the deck they came to play Arkham with. And if you play Arkham infrequently, especially like if you play it like once every week or once every 2 weeks, this can feel really bad, right? Because you can ultimately feel as if you lost a game night when this happens. And that's a bummer, right? Like, it's one of those things where if you are, you have this deck that you really want to play and you can only access it every, like, very limited amount of time, it kind of just sucks to lose that and, like, for an entire game night, and then you have to wait 2 weeks to actually play what you wanted to play. This actually, a similar thing sort of happened when I played this scenario yesterday with Daniel. When we finished it, he said, this left a very sour taste in my mouth. Can we play? I want to play one more scenario so I can feel like I actually like impacted the game, right? And I think that is I imagine how a lot of people can feel after the scenario if they don't vibe with it or they feel like they've kind of been neutered by the scenario. So having the ability as a player like me and Daniel, who get to play a lot of Arkham, it's very easy to just like take your beatings and then keep going, right? But if you're someone who has to wait like 2 weeks for the group to get together to do it again, that can be a big bummer. So I very heavily relate to that one for why that might be an issue. So with this, I'm gonna say that like I get it, but maybe there's a way that you can still feel like you're impacting the scenario without necessarily being the investigator that you're unable to play. Like maybe this is like a point of no return, that a line you do not want to cross, where like that is what Arkham is. The Arkham to you is your investigator, right? And that might be something that we can never meet an agreement with. But maybe if it's just the fact that you feel like you're kind of powerless in this scenario, or you had some stuff taken away from you, maybe we can make that work as we get deeper into this video. This additionally, beyond just the investigator, can be very upsetting to lose your unique cards, especially if your deck is built around them. If your deck is like a combo piece built around some sort of unique card, right? Like let's just look at some like level card. I mean, I guess like a lot of unique card. What's a unique combo card? I'm recording this with chat, so there might be some combinations that come with it, right? Like the red clock is not really a combo piece. Like you can combo with it, but the red clock's kind of just value, right? Like gold pocket watch is also just value. There's got to be maybe something in the mystic class. Maybe the mystic class has got something here. Funnily enough, the mystic class is actually probably one of the better ones when it comes to this scenario, because like their spells are just always good, right? Like a Rite of Seeking as a Yithian hits as hard as a Rite of Seeking as like Marie Lambeau, right? Yeah, I mean, like, I get it. Like, I heard a story, and this was part of it, is like, losing the Anti-Kithra after you put it into your deck, right? Like, that sucks. Like, it's one of those things where, it would really hurt to, like, put something into your deck right before the scenario and then immediately lose it. I think Daniel had something like that. He was mentioning it. And, like, I think the biggest sin that City of Archive has is that the blind play can really suck, right? To some players, the blind play for this scenario is one of the best things they'll ever have, right? Like, Eric loved this scenario and the blind play that came with it, right? That's one of those things that the players who love the blind play will love this, but there's going to be a lot of players that the blind play for this scenario is just an absolute nightmare. The other thing that happens is that this can be a big gotcha for losing signatures and then keeping signature weaknesses. Let's just say, for example, I was playing this scenario with Daniel yesterday, and he was playing Mr. Carson Sinclair. And Carson Sinclair has a signature weakness that is just take one horror. That's pretty spooky. You have no power about to getting rid of this. It's just a card in your deck that is always there and will always be an issue. And it's always something that you're going to be drawing into, because this scenario is a very draw-heavy scenario. It's designed to be draw-heavy, and having to constantly draw this card over and over and over again can be very bad. Compare that to, I was playing Silas Marsh, due to a run that will be starting on the channel soon, and it's a great run. You should all watch it. We're playing these two in two-handed solo. I have in mine Siren Call. That's mine that I had here, right? Which is not too bad in this one. It's just a double action. But like, it's one of those things where it's like not everyone is made equally for this kind of problem. Losing the ability can be really bad. Like the player that kind of, I know how to spell Lucius, who kind of inspired this thing was Lucius. And like, if your deck is built around evading enemies, it can feel really bad to then lose your primary source of getting clues and ultimately losing what your deck is, right? But then there's also people who bring someone like Preston, right? And Preston just gets better. He just gets like his stuff like he just becomes like a better version of what Preston is. And he still even gets to keep his this, which is kind of crazy, right? Like, 'cause this is not a unique item. He doesn't have to get rid of it, right? But then, like, even in the Silas's deck, like, if I was playing a Silas deck and I'm bringing my harpoon is gone. And if this was my only way of fighting enemies, that can be really bad in this scenario. So, like, what I'm trying to say about this point is I totally relate to the stress of the blind play. And I think that a lot of people, when they play Arkham, they maybe play this scenario like once every few, like every like maybe year or two, right? Like maybe someone hasn't, like they played Forgotten Age and then it'll be like 2 or 3 years until they play it again. So it's also taking that into context when I'm talking about all these cards that come with it. So like losing your investigator can suck, right? And then, but sometimes you lose your ability, which may or may not be relevant. Most cases it is because you're building around that investigator. But then you're also stuck with like a signature that you actually can't do anything with, right? Like Carson and Lucius actually have pretty similar weaknesses for this, but the Carson actually has no counterplay against it at all, right? But it's like the same sort of thing where it's like because investigator cards are not designed with specific scenarios in mind, it can kind of lead to these kind of open things, right? But yeah, it's one of those things. I think that like even Ostinato, you're saying here, Ostinato might be the person who partly inspired this video and this discussion. If you're only playing one scenario every 2 weeks, the impact of losing your investigator hurts a lot more than like, so for example, Daniel and I recording these videos yesterday, we played 3 scenarios, right? Like that really changes the impact of these things, which I think totally kind of makes sense why it feels worse to lose your investigator for a scenario. Compared to like it's easy for me to hand wave it and be like, yeah, but there's 9 scenarios in the Forgotten Age. But if you're playing one scenario every 2 weeks, those 9 scenarios are now 18 weeks of your life, right? So like that's a lot of time to like the impact of that. It kind of like becomes even harder to kind of swallow the pill for what the City of Archives represents for Arkham Horror, the card game. All right, so that is kind of like the big elephant in the room here for like, this is, I think, the big reason why people dislike this scenario. And this one ultimately is something that you can't fix because this always happens. You have very little control over it. I don't think that the effect is big enough that it should dictate why you as a player should change your investigator choice for this campaign, because again, I've brought multiple different investigators through this, multiple different decks, and this is the one that I think is the most impactful, and it's ultimately the one that is it's unavoidable. You can't adapt with it. So everything else from here on is going to be, from what I've seen and what I've heard, to also kind of talking about how you as a player can adapt, because you can't really adapt to the investigator switch. That is unavoidable. You can't not take the unique items out of your deck. That is unavoidable. But everything else, we're going to kind of approach this from how can you as a player have a better time with City of Archives with the challenges that it's giving you. Not saying that you need to like City of Archives. My goal from this video is not to have you be like, I love City of Archives. The goal is I'm crushing City of Archives. That's what it's going to try to, is the goal is ultimately trying to turn into, to kind of change that perspective. So, the next talking point I have here is I don't like scenarios that force me to play a different way. There are a few scenarios in Arkham Horror that make different demands of the players. To a lesser extent, we have Horror in High Gear and Ridden in Rock. So that is the car scenario from Innsmouth and the mine cart scenario from Hemlock Vale. To a greater extent, we have Clutches of Chaos, Undimensioned Unseen, and of course, City of Archives. Clutches of Chaos is the pandemic scenario from Circle Undone, and Undimensioned and Unseen is where you have to fight the Broods in the Dunnage Legacy. I think that the City of Archives is likely the biggest committer of this sin, so understandably it gets the most hate because of that. So I guess the question before we move on, what does it mean when a scenario forces you to play a different way, right? I think we go through all of these and try to be as spoiler-free as possible to talk about how it changes how you play Arkham, right? So Horror and High Gear and Ridden and Rock, those are the smallest changes for this, but what they essentially do is they remove your ability to have movement. So an example of this, and this is actually something I'd be very curious, for people who don't like having their investigator taken away from them, a good example of this is Ursula Downs in Horror and High Gear, or Ridden and Rock, where she essentially loses her ability, right? So like she essentially turns kind of into a Yithian, right? Like the same sort of idea where her card effect is blank, her weakness becomes harder, right? Like it becomes much harder to not just take two horror. Those are the kind of things where like it means that you kind of lose some abilities that your deck would otherwise have. Another example is Monterey Jack. His ability is essentially just turned off in those scenarios. To a bigger extent for Clutches of Chaos and Undimensioned and Unseen, Clutches of Chaos asks that you look at your resources differently, and the goal of the game becomes less just traditional, I'm here to get clues, and more, how do I get these clues on the board, and then how do I get them? Undimensioned and Unseen is a widely maligned scenario to the point where some people just choose to resign rather than play it. This one also actually has a pretty minor way. I think it's kind of overblown for how it forces you to change. But a big thing is that you can't fight the boss monsters traditionally. You have to use your brain, your willpower to get things done, and that can be a little bit harder of a pill to swallow or adapt to. City of Archives does this kind of in the way that it takes away your investigator, gives you a new stat line, but I think that the biggest thing is that it makes you ask excuse me, it asks you to look at your resources differently. So while City of Archives does have specific demands, I'd argue that the demands of the scenario are actually very minimal at its core, and this is just a regular Arkham scenario that asks you to look at your resources differently. The reason that the way that it asks you to look at your resources differently is the next most common thing that I've seen people talk about in City of Archives, which is cards in my deck become useless. It's not fun to feel as if the cards in your deck become useless. Again, talking about Ursula and Horror and High Gear, right? Talking about, I don't know, Jim Culver in any scenario you play him in, right? But are they cards truly useless, or has the value of the card changed and you're looking at the wrong part of the card? This is what City of Archives is asking you as a player to do. It's not asking you to hold the cards in your hand for the perfect time to use them. It's asking you as a player to use those cards when use those cards almost immediately when a test is asking of you to pass them, and then passing that test, right? So it's asking you to change your perspective on the card that you're looking at. Let's just say I'm a Guardian and I have a bunch of Guardian cards in my deck, right? Like, it's one of those things where, let's just say, I don't know, this Prepared for the Worst, right? Prepared for the Worst 2. Let's just talk about this card, right? Where I could use this to tutor up my weapon that I can use to kill an enemy. And it's a good choice, right? I mean, maybe this is a bad idea, a bad example here. Let's just go with even Dodge. Let's look at Dodge. I think Dodge is a good one. I can hold this card to try and perfectly dodge an enemy attack as I would in a normal Arkham scenario. But City of Archives is asking for me to instead look at the icons on this card, right? Because when you're a Yithian, when you commit one time per skill test after you commit a card, not a skill card, just a card to a skill test, you can double the icons on that card, right? So now if we go back to Dodge, I can hold this for the perfect time to dodge like I would in a normal Arkham scenario. But the reality is, in that City of Archives, again, it's asking you to look at those skill icons, so I could use this as a guts. I can get 2 willpower, 2 brain for a test, or I can get 4 foot for a test committing that to this card. It also kind of signposts it. We're going to talk about this in a bit, but just look at that skull and internalize that skull and ask, what does that mean? And we're going to get back to this. But this is how, like, cards don't become useless. Like, there are enemies in this scenario, and the enemies can hit hard, right? But maybe in the right moment, it's one of those things where you need to kind of change the perspective of how you're looking at the card. That's what, to me, Arkham is all about. It's about adapting on the fly, and I'll touch into this a little bit later as well. And while it definitely feels bad to commit a card you spent a lot of XP for to a random test, this scenario asks you as a player if you want to embrace what this scenario is asking of you, which is to use cards that you would have used in the past scenarios for their specific reason, but instead changing it to this new reason that's beneficial to the scenario. And if you do that, you're going to have an easier time winning the scenario. Cards in your deck are not useless, even if they feel like they might be. Even like if it's some card that's like, I don't know, something super hyper specific. Like, man, these cards these are all just good cards. I can't think of an example right now, right? But like, the value of some cards have changed. I think this is commonly found in events, right? Like, even like this Fang of Tirthra, right? Like, you can look at this card and wait for the perfect enemy to kill. Or you could commit it to this test to get four fist icons, right? And like, that's one of those things where the value of the cards have changed. They may feel useless, but they are not useless. When I started to do better in City of Archives is when I realized that I needed to kind of fit the demands of the scenario. And the scenario is asking you to change when you use cards and to spend your cards, like, it's like asking you to spend your cards judiciously in the first half and then save them up in the second half, as opposed to what we normally see in Arkham, which is about using the cards when they're most efficient as opposed to just when you need them right now. And this comes into the next little thing that we got here, which is, I think, the most important part of Arkham, and that is the game is not here to let you win. The key to learning how to adapt to what a scenario is asking you is to remember that while this game is cooperative, the game is actively trying to make you lose. Its goal is to eliminate you as best as it can, but with that goal, the designers work hard to give you a lot of tools to find victory as the game is trying to crush you. You can look at the losses to your deck and investigator as unfair, and that's fine for your own personal preference, but if you dig deeper, you can see how little your investigator and missing cards actually matter when it comes to winning the scenario. Not when it comes to actually, like, getting your experience of how you want to play that investigator, but when it comes to winning the scenario, there actually are a lot of tools that you have. Again, the skill icons on the cards, using the ability for this, adapting to what the scenario wants. But if you look, the shroud values, for the most part in this scenario, are actually pretty low for what would be a scenario 7 of a campaign, right? Because like this one, only a 1 shroud location. 2 shroud location and victory 2, right? There are some that are 4s, like we got some 4, we got a 4 over here, we got a 4 over here. But everything else is 2, 3, right? Like, the shroud values are pretty fine for the most part. This carries over to the enemies. Like, this is not an enemy for a scenario 7, right? But this scenario, again, is balanced, right? Like, it's like the designers are trying to make you lose, but they're also trying not to just, like, make it unfair against you, right? Like this guy, he does have 4. He does have 4 fight. Like, that's a high number. But look at his evade value. His evade value is only 1. We got this guy who's probably the chunkiest boy, apart from, of course, the Yithian observers, which are just like regular enemies, right? But this is kind of like the boss monster of the scenario. Most of the time, people will kill this guy at the start as like kind of the decision that goes with it. So like the enemies are also kind of pretty fair for this first one. Because if this was a regular scenario, we would see like this guy would probably be a 4-2-4, right? Like this guy would probably be, honestly, this guy probably would just stay the same. He's pretty good as he is. But it's like these small things that while the scenario is not trying to let you win, it's giving you as a player a balanced experience to use the tools that the scenario provides to help you come up with a good victory, right? Because of these values, I mean, like, there are, again, situations where these numbers can become higher for one test, but, like, this is just, like, the traditional Arkham experience as well. But if you look at it, it's actually pretty chill for what would be the 7th scenario, sometimes 6th scenario that you play in a campaign. So, if we look at these again, the values, it's pretty easy to be up to, right? Like, if you commit, let's just say you're investigating this location right here. If you commit 1 book icon to this test, you're up 2. Which, if you're playing on standard difficulty, is where you want to be for, like, scenarios 1, 2, 3, but usually not for scenario 7. So let's go back and look at the scenario reference card, right? Very easy for this scenario, right? Like, for scenario 7, again, in the context of where this is in the campaign, the numbers are actually very fair for when it comes to this, right? And again, if we look at what that skull token is trying to tell you, it's trying to tell you that you want to have 4 or fewer cards in your hand, right? So to make the skull more reliable, because this is the token bag that we played this scenario with yesterday, right? With a little bit of an asterisk on it that you'll know when you see it, right? Like, this is if you have 4 cards in hand, all of these tokens in the bag pass when you're 2 up, right? So that means only 3 of 16 tokens will cause you to fail if you're 2 up, which means that for, again, this 2 Shroud location, that 1 book icon that you commit with the Yithian's ability is a pass on 13 of 16 tokens in the bag, right? So then again, we go back to look at cards that you might be like, damn, this shit's useless, right? Like, I can't do anything with this card. Why am I looking at the guarding cards? Let's go to the rogue cards, because those are ones that are always a little bit finicky, right? Like, even, like, let's go out on a limb here, right? Like, even Lockpicks 1, if you don't have static fists or static book or foot boosts in your deck, this is a card that you should just commit to a test to get up to, like, to get 2 icons out of it, pass, and then get the clue that way. And if that's the thing, like, it feels so wrong from what you normally expect in Arkham, but again, it's about adapting to what the scenario wants to have the best chance of winning, right? So the game is not here to let you win, but it has a lot of tools to win. And the cards may feel useless, but are they actually useless, or are these tests really relevant? Because if we look at the objectives for this, like, our objectives for the scenario, we have book 3, double action, foot 3, fist 4, book 4, right? So they're kind of all over the place. So even these icons that you feel like you might not need on, like, this random card, like, hey, these 2 foot icons on breaking and entering, these two book icons, like, maybe your Restrad, you're like, ooh, this is now 4 fist that I can use for one of these tests, as opposed to using it what you traditionally use it for. And some people might not like that, but I think you're actively hurting your ability to succeed and win, and that's kind of what we like to talk about here at Playing Board Games. It's how to win more Arkham Horror, and I think you do need to adapt to that. Now, with all that said, let's talk about the gotcha moments and some bad design of this scenario. We're not here to just praise this scenario forever and just, like, have that be kind of what it is. So let's talk about some of the faults of this one. Beyond just the Yithian thing, because again, I think we've already spent enough time talking about that. Let's talk about some gotcha moments and the blind play. This is where I think City of Archives has its biggest faults. While I personally don't view the missing investigator and uniques as gotchas, I don't. I really don't. I do think there are some design decisions that I find questionable. I think the first one that really can feel very bad is the item assets. Cannot put item assets into play. I understand why this is here. This is here to give you as a player time to adapt and understand what the scenario is asking of you, and to realize, ooh, maybe I shouldn't keep these item assets in my mulligan, or alternatively, if I did hit this item asset in my mulligan, rather than hold it for 5 turns, because that's what I'm trained to do, I should use it to just get clues in advance now, and then hopefully draw the second copy later, or alternatively, just try to win the scenario without it, right? I do think it's a little bit strange. I don't know. I think that I understand why it's happening, but I don't really vibe with it too much. The other thing that I think is a little bit questionable is the striking fear encounter set. I think that ultimately this just does not fit with the scenario at all, and I think that it's it doesn't really, like, it doesn't fit to me flavor-wise, and it doesn't really fit with the numbers on the cards. I think that these are ultimately not the best. However, with that said, aside from the enemies, this encounter set is likely the only thing in this scenario that's going to actually kill you. So I understand there needed to be something threatening in there, but I just don't think it doesn't work. This is thrown to the extreme with Rotting Remains, because it's coupled up with the fact that there is a Rotting Remains on this card, right? So you can get a gotcha of just checking out this location, and it's just when you enter it. It's not even when you reveal it. It's whenever you enter this location. You have to test Brain 3 and take 1 horror for each point you fail by. This can feel really bad if someone eats this effect and then draws this on the next Mythos phase, or alternatively draws this on the Mythos phase and then enters this for their first action on the blind play, right? It's now to the point where if you don't have a way to take this test, you kind of just avoid this location, which is not great, right? It's one of those things where, like, it's a big gotcha on the blind plays negatively, and it also is just not the best. I don't know. I just think it's a weird choice to have there. Like, I would rather if it was just like, even if it was like Brain 4, if you fail, take 1 horror, right? Like, that would be, I mean, even just like 2 horror. I don't know. This one is just strange. I've been in situations, it might have happened yesterday, where one player drew all the Rotting Remains and was just like on the edge of death for the majority of the scenario, compounded by the fact that this is where Soak exists a lot of the times, right? So it's like a perfect storm to kind of make things a little bit shittier. This is also when I played a Jenny deck, where she died, and Silas had to solo it, and he did. He was a fighter Silas, and he got all the clues because that's just what Silas is. Again, skill-based investigators are very good in this scenario. While I think anybody can do it, there is a notable advantage to an investigator, like specifically Silas and Min. Winifred also probably would be pretty good, but a lot of players also don't play her as only skills, but she has a lot of icons and commits a bunch, so she adapts to this very well. But I think that the Rotting Remains and then these kind of out of nowhere gotcha compound with the fact that people lost their investigator, lost player cards, feel like their cards are useless. It kind of compounds to feeling like you have no control or power over the scenario. But this is actually one of the scenarios where you have the most power over. But all these things are kind of like a perfect storm to make it so that the blind play can feel very, very bad if you don't expect these rug pulls happening. The last thing I want to talk about is getting stuck as a Yithian, because it can happen and it sucks. It's rare, but it really sucks. It happened to me as Joe Diamond, and it sucked. So if you don't get enough of the objectives, right, you need to have 5 to be able to get through without any sort of risk of downside. On 3 and 4, so 3 is like the baseline if you win, right? 4 is if you got 1 more, there's a chance. So if we go to the backfire, right? If you reveal one of the really bad symbol tokens, you become a body of a Yithian. And I think that while I am a big believer in campaign enders at various points of a campaign, and while I view City of Archives on this, I can relate to the fact that it can feel particularly unfun because of all the factors that we talked about earlier, especially on a blind play. Like now, when I've played this scenario enough and I know what to expect, if it happens, I know that I played bad, right? Like I know I made decisions that were bad, but if I, as a player, was doing this for like my first or second time and I didn't understand that I needed to adapt to what the scenario was asking, it kind of just feels like a shitty cherry on top of a shitty sundae, right? Like it's just like something that is, it's going to leave a more bitter taste compared to other campaign enders. And I think that the flavor wise, I think that this is really, really fun. I understand why it can feel so bad when it happens. Again, earlier plays, I think it hurts more. Later plays, it might just be because of the decisions you're making. But we're kind of talking about this in the full context that it sucks when this happens, but I think at a certain point, it might be your fault if you've played a few of these. So, you know, hate the player, not the game. This is the opposite of that. But like, I think that that is just... I think this sucks, and I relate to people who have had it happen to them, especially in like their earlier plays. So there's not much I can say about that to defend it. I think that campaign enders are fun, but I think that, again, with all the factors going with this on the blind play, I mean, Forgotten Age is a very hard blind play campaign. It just doesn't like, it doesn't work well for blind plays for Forgotten Age, and you only get one blind play of a campaign. I love the blind plays, and I like when they're hard, but not many people do, so just a big consideration. However, ultimately, I think that City of Archives is important to the design of Arkham. While it may not be a successful design for everybody, it's better for designers to swing for the fences and whiff than try to always do the same cookie cutter sort of thing. It's important for designers to design. It's important for designers to try things to see what works and what doesn't. Because then designers can reiterate on that and try new things and just like come in from a different approach. Exploring the vast design space that Arkham has is a reason why Arkham continues to make new content, while the official stuff continues to explore great like new avenues of exploration, and why like custom content designers can still also explore cool spaces. And if it was always just the same sort of scenario all the time, that would be bad. I'm not saying that every campaign needs a City of Archives. I don't think that is the case at all. But I think that ultimately, the game is better when there is the random scenario once every 3 or so campaigns that really just explores what Arkham Horror can be. And if it does it in a way that ultimately is fair, I think that City of Archives is ultimately fair when all is said and done. The game is better for it. It's why Scarlet Keys is good for the game, even if it's my least favorite campaign. It's the same sort of thing for people who may not like City of Archives. I hope you can at least appreciate why this scenario is good for the design of Arkham, even if it's not your cup of tea, right? Everybody in this fandom has a different campaign that's their favorite for potentially a different reason than someone else. And I think that that is why Arkham is so good. So, again, this video was not here to tell you that you were wrong for not liking City of Archives, or even to convince people that they were right for liking City of Archives. This video was to understand why people might not like it, why people may like it, but ultimately the goal of this scenario was to give you some pointers on how to come across more victorious in this scenario with the handicap that the scenario gives you. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments. If you want to see more kind of like individual deep dives on scenarios, I'd be happy to do them. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support me individually, you can do so by joining the Patreon with all these awesome names over here. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.